Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Schmoedown Rundown. Introducing first, Frankie Stats Janisch. And their co-host, the man of controversy, Mr. Bryan the Duke Davids. And finally, your host, Aaron Turner. Let's get ready to Schmoedown.
What's going on, Movie Trivia Schmoedown fans? It's episode number 41 of the Schmoedown Rundown. My name is Aaron. I am your host, as always. Joining me today, he does stats. He's scared of dolls. His name is Frank Janisch. What's up, man?
I'm still kind of reeling from watching Annabelle the other day, and I don't ever want to see another doll again.
Okay, very nice. Also here, not sure what his stance is on killer dolls, but his name is Brian Davids. What's happening, man?
Aaron, Frank, I'm always delighted to do the rundown, especially since we actually watch the content we engage with.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yep.
All right, guys, before we jump into the tournament news, I'm sure we're all ready to engage with that. Brian, I believe you have some breaking news you want to share?
Well, it's not quite breaking, but we do have a confirmation on what Rotten Tomatoes' new team name is. That is Team MODOK, a name that Christian is probably doing cartwheels over. MODOK is an acronym for Mental, Mobile, Mechanized Organism Designed Only for Killing. It's also the name for different fictional supervillains appearing in Marvel Comics. So that is the new team name for Rotten Tomatoes. Now that Matt Atchity has moved over to the Young Turks, I know there were some big question marks about that. So that is that.
What about the Levine McWeeny team name? That's not breaking news?
Above the line, I guess you could say, is in that same category. But yeah, thanks for reminding me, Frank.
Sure.
I still like Levine.
Levine's good.
Fun name, but
I still prefer Ain't It Cool Geek, but that's just me.
Okay.
We have so many names.
Well, as someone that names teams on occasion, I just thought my 2 cents should be.
You mean stables?
Whatever. All right, guys. Let's talk about the team tournament. Christian did a video this week on the Facebook page of the the Movie Trivia Schmoedown Facebook group, and he gave us the breakdown of who's going to be in the Ultimate Schmoedown team tournament, whether he wanted to or not. He gave us all of the teams. I'll go ahead and start. I'll name them all off on the bracket, and then we'll talk about it. We have top 10 versus the Real Rejects. Mark Andreyko versus Robert Meyer Burnett, Mark Andreyko and Robert Meyer Burnett versus Heroes, which will now consist of Hector Navarro and John Schnepp. Team Trek versus Cinema Blend. Team Action versus Deep Cuts. Wolves of Steel versus Josh McCouga and mystery partner that you don't know, but we do. Critically Acclaimed versus Late to the Party. Nerds Watch versus Above the Line. 6 Degrees versus DC Movie News. Now, the one that kind of sticks out here is Deep Cuts, as they did lose this week to IGN. We'll discuss that in a little bit. But, Frank, give me your overall thoughts on this bracket here. Was it kind of how you saw it? Does anything stick out to you?
These matches, aside from the top 10 Real Rejects, Wolves of Steel, and McCouga Mystery Partner, all these other matches are going to be very, very close. I'm having a hard time figuring out who I'm going to pick. I just think these matchups are really good matchups for the tournament for the first round. And, man, I take a look at Cinema Blend and Trek. There's not a whole lot to go on for Cinema Blend. Trek, they've had a decent run getting their shot at the Patriots and failing controversially, if you want to say. So I really don't know what to expect from these teams that haven't played, like Above the Line, Levine, McWeeny. I don't know what we're going to get from them. And Draco Burnett, Heroes. I mean, there's so much kind of new teams in here. It's really hard to kind of make a good educated guess, if you could ever make an educated guess for a Schmoedown match. So, man, I'm really, really intrigued just by all these teams in here and the matchups we have in the first round.
Brian, you look at this tournament, we got some teams in here we were expecting. We got some we weren't. The tournament got expanded from 8 to 16. Anything stick out to you here?
Well, we can't ignore the fact or bury the lead that Grifton Christian wanted us to think that he spoiled Tuesday's team match when he announced that Deep Cuts was included in the tournament. We'll talk more about this later, but obviously he was going for something there. But I'm really intrigued by a couple matches here, specifically the Nerds Watch versus Above the Line. I think these two teams match up very well. I think this is going to be a very competitive match when you just look at each individual player and compare them to the players on the other team. So that's going to be a slugfest. I'm really looking forward to Heroes versus Android and Burnett. Yeah, Schnepp is a weaker player, but Navarro is so good that he can make up for Schnepp to varying degrees. And when it comes to Top Bottom versus Real Rejects, I'm not sure Top Bottom should be in this tournament. They're not. They're not?
They're not. No, it's top 10.
Oh, I see. Very nice. Well, see, Top Bottom, they just had a title shot. And I feel like some fresh blood deserved a crack at this because they just lost their chance. I feel like they should be put in the sidelines. You don't need to have Real Rejects in this tournament. Yeah, they're fun guys, but I think that this pool could have been condensed a bit to give some opportunity to some other teams. But regardless, there's great stuff, and critically acclaimed. This is theirs to lose at this point. I'm very excited to see the Beast potentially go for 2 titles in the next few months.
I count at least 2 thumbs down right now by that past statement, but yeah, top 10 is in there. They deserve to be in there, despite whatever you will say. It doesn't matter. They deserve to be in there. I think that critically acclaimed is, I agree with you there, that it is theirs to lose, but my goodness, they have a murderer's row to get through in this tournament. You got Nerds Watch, Levine McWeeny, DC Movie News, 6 Degrees, and Wolves of Steel all on their side of the bracket. So it's a tough road, man.
On that side of the bracket, 6 Degrees and DC Movie News is probably a pretty easy matchup for that second round if you're Nerds Watch or Levine McWeeny. And I'm just being real here. I just don't think 6 Degrees and DC Movie News can probably get out of that second round, whoever they face out of Nerds Watch and Levine McWeeny Above the Line. So I think the other side of the bracket is more intriguing. I think that's the tougher side of the bracket because 6 Degrees and DC Movie News are on the other side.
Can we agree, though, that the right side of the bracket is a little more stacked than the left?
Absolutely.
Do you think that, Frank, or no?
I think there's more individual talent on that side, but I think overall teams is probably a little more competitive on the other side, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, I saw someone in the Facebook group that had the Real Rejects going all the way to the finals, and
that was
to that person, I just say, drugs are fun. So, I mean, anything else we got to say here? Anything else we want to wrap up before we? We're going to talk about the tournament more in depth at a later time before it actually gets going. So stick around for that. That's why we're not going too in depth here. We just kind of want to get the basics going. Anything else before we move on?
Yeah, I'm just bummed by who is not in this tournament. That's all I'm going to say for now.
Yep, we'll get to that in a second. No doubt about it.
Well, folks, it's time for our new segment, The Ward Wing, where we highlight the weekly Schmoedown art that our friend and partner Bryan Ward designs. Somebody tried to call his artful Schmoedown posters memes, something I took great exception to, because guys like us create memes. Ward creates pure glass because he's a goddamn artist. But as everyone can now see from our new show artwork, we're now compiling both of Bryan's weekly match posters, with Bryan's help, of course, so that his works of art are prominently displayed across YouTube for posterity's sake, pun intended. The JTE Napzok poster was one of his best as he paid homage to Stallone's Over the Top. Perhaps that put JTE over the top, you never know. For Deep Cuts and IGN, he paid tribute to The Goonies. On that note, I have to admit that one of my most significant movie blind spots is that I've never seen The Goonies, but definitely check out Bryan's work at bryaneward.com as well as at Bryan E. Ward on Twitter. The world of the Schmoedown continues to be a better place thanks to anyone named Bryan.
Bryan Ward, you're right.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, Frank. But yeah, man, I gotta say, I got up this morning. It's Friday when we record this. Sorry, spoiler alert. But I got up this morning before I went to work. I saw it. He tagged us in it, and I saw the poster, and I was like, wow, this is really something. The over-the-top poster. Knew it immediately. And the thing is, JTE, I think, was more over the moon for it than anybody else. He loved it.
The over-the-top one is, between the two this week, over-the-top is my favorite one. And I have very fond memories of over-the-top because growing up, I would watch WGN at like 2 a.m. and Over the Top was always on at that hour. And so when I saw this poster, I was just like, yeah, that's some good stuff. Did
you see Josh McCouga on WGN at 2?
I don't watch WGN anymore, so
Oh, wow, that's offensive.
Yeah, well,
I think I could beat Aaron in arm wrestling. That's just my opinion, though.
And what universe are we in?
This one.
This one? Oh, okay. Well, I know where I place my bets then.
This is an extended universe.
Let's jump into the team recap. How about it?
You love to jump, Aaron. You always like to jump.
I'm a Van Halen fan, just like Mark Ellis. Might as well jump, I say. It was IGN, Jim Vejvoda and Eric Goldman versus Deep Cuts, Aaron Wilhelm and Thad Williams. I got some pre-match notes here before we jump into the scoring. Jim Vejvoda, guys, he's getting into it. He's starting to really embrace this league. I saw him pumping up the crowd. He was talking a little trash. Jim and Eric are kind of soft-spoken so far when it comes to promos. They haven't really leaned in as much, but they did this time. What'd you guys think of that?
Well, I was getting so amped up because they were talking trash about Rotten Tomatoes. I was getting super excited for the inevitable rematch between these two teams. They are, often linked together for a variety of reasons, and I love that IGN was going after the clammy hands debacle because they were reminding everyone how bad of a call that was. That it was a screw job of all screw jobs, and I was so excited that this rivalry was going to be exploited for years to come.
But then Deep Cuts even played to the clammy hands bit by doing their own. So I thought that was pretty fun.
Aaron Wilhelm used some visual effects to mess with the appearance of IGN, as IGN predicted he would. So nice use of visual effects there. But a great promo from two teams that are lesser known.
He also made Ken Napzok disappear briefly in the post. I thought that was pretty fun as well. Frank, what did you think of Jim Vejvoda here?
Yeah, I think we're seeing him come slowly out of his shell and him becoming more of not just a force in the play of the Schmoedown matches, but, I think he's getting into it. And you've heard Christian talk about how he's got the bug. And I think that was pretty evident in his promo.
Seems like one name is on his mind, Atchity. So yeah. We'll see where that leads down the round. But let's talk about
I thought you were going to say V for Vejvoda.
No. Iron Jim Vejvoda is looking for Matt Atchity.
Vejvoda's Vendetta, Flying V.
Okay. In round one, it was IGN getting 13 points, Jim getting all 8, Eric getting 5. Jim did miss the bonus question. Deep Cuts getting 9, Thad getting 5, and Aaron getting 4. I gotta talk about something real quick here. Question 7. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was a movie adapted from a novel written by whom? Is that a movie question?
Yeah, I kind of thought about that at first as well, but, I thought it was I know the answer. I would hope they...
Well, it's a well-known book series, of course, but if I said, hey, Frank, the film Gone Girl, directed by David Fincher, who wrote the book? You have any idea? Of course
Ben
not.
Affleck?
No, of course not.
Gillian Flynn.
Well, what did you guys think here? Brian, is that a question? Do we really need to answer book authors in the Movie Trivia Schmoedown?
Adaptation questions are few and far between. I'll give you that. The only reason it might be allowed is because it's such a famous book series. But yeah, it's kind of a bridge too far, if you ask me. I had some issues with other questions in this match that are certainly significant as well. But yeah, I don't think we need to get too in depth when it comes to adaptation questions, unless it's for like a classic novel questions, such as The Great Expectations, the author of that. And even to that point, it's still kind of iffy.
Okay, fair enough. What did we think of this first round overall, though? Jim gets all 8. I guess we shouldn't be surprised at this point. He does miss the bonus question, but, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't.
Did anybody know Carrie Russell's Baked Goods and Waitress?
Yeah, I knew it was pies, yes.
Really?
Yeah, I used to work at a video store, and it was one of the posters that we got on the wall. It's her actually holding a pie, so I just assumed it was a pie. I've stumped Brian Davids. This is fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
So, Frank, let's talk about Jim here getting all 8 questions correct. Yeah, he missed the bonus question, but whoop-de-doo, didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things at this point. Were you impressed here?
Yeah, because you take a look at Bibbiani's first match and how he followed up. I mean, he was pretty good, but you don't expect to see that from multiple players, and Jim has now become one of those players, at least in regards to the first round, because it's the same for singles and teams. He's become the 5th player in the team division to answer all 8 correct. Him, Jeff Snyder, Whitney Seibold as of late, Robert Montano from Late to the Party did it, and Matt Atchity was the first to ever do it. So he joins that very elite club, and it was just great performance from him. He's now answered, in his first match, he answered 7. In his second match, he answered 7. Now in his third one, he's answered 8. And now, next time up, whenever that may be, he's just got to go get that bonus question to join the other 3 people who have done it.
Pretty daggone impressive.
Yeah, this is now 3 near dominant matches from Jim flying v Vejvoda, something that I predicted from the very first match. He would be a dominant force in this league for a very long time, so I like seeing what we saw in round 1. But moving to round 2, IGN spun Spinner's Choice. So the poster came to life after the fact. Brian Ward, your powers are even greater than we ever expected. IGN, they picked comic book movies. Eric Goldman was super excited about this. We'll expand more on this later for obvious reasons. Question number 1, who did Paul Giamatti play in Amazing Spider-Man 2? Unfortunately, that would be Rhino, 15-9 IGN. Question 2, in Age of Ultron, a movie I would love to forget, Hawkeye was the only one not subdued by Scarlet, the Scarlet Witch, 17-9 IGN. Question 3, Jackie Boy in Sin City, 19-9 IGN. Question 4, Harley Quinn bartends in Suicide Squad, one of the few good scenes in that film, 21-9 IGN. Question 5, Chris O'Dowd in Thor 2, Natalie Portman's 2-minute date, 23-9 IGN. And question 6, how old was Clark Kent when Zod arrived in Man of Steel? They had to go to multiple choice. IGN got a point anyway, 24-9 IGN to end an 11-point turn. Frank, give me your thoughts on IGN's round 2.
Pure dominance, and that Thor question was a really good pool, I thought. The Man of Steel, was it Man of Steel, right, in that 6th question?
Yeah.
That was probably their toughest question, I thought, besides that Thor one. And they came out with 1 point because they're that good. And I was happy to see Eric Goldman really kind of shine in this round. This was definitely his area of expertise.
Yeah, I think they definitely picked to his strength because Vejvoda is strong across the board. So I like that they went with Goldman's strength, because if Goldman is on, IGN is virtually unbeatable. So Titan, let me get your thoughts on IGN's dominant second round.
I just have a 1-word quote. Wow. Shout out to Danielle Galafasi.
Wow.
Let's move to Deep Cuts' spin. They spun comedy and they took it, which is surprising since neither of them are stand-up comedians. You would think that you have to be a stand-up to choose comedy, but Deep Cuts is subverting expectations. Question 1, Balls of Fury, ping pong, 24-11, IGN. Question 2, Owen Wilson in Shanghai Noon, multiple choice. His real name was Wyatt Earp, so kind of a trick question, 24-11, IGN. Nobody got that, of course. Question 3, Silverman in Saving Silverman, played by Jason Biggs, 24-13 IGN, as Deep Cuts gains 2. Question 4, Adam Sandler in Anger Management, 24-15 IGN, as Deep Cuts gains another 2. Question 5, General Rancor in Spy Hard, multiple choice. They missed it. The correct answer was Andy Griffith. And this was the moment in the match where Christian stole my Tricky Skaliski nickname without crediting me. I wasn't going to give him a hard time for seeing the Emoji Movie before Dunkirk, but this changed everything. And question 6, City Slickers go on what? A cattle drive, 25-17 IGN as Deep Cuts gains another 2. That's an 8-point round for Deep Cuts. Titan, let me get your thoughts on Deep Cuts' 8-point turn.
Cattle drive saved their life, pretty much. It was just about over at that point, and Aaron looked a little bit stressed by it. He was like, "They're driving cattle. There's cattle. You move them. It's a cattle drive." So, good pull there to save them in the match. Skalinski, I know that we've said this before that he kind of gets some questions for certain movies, whether it's Green Lantern or Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I believe this is the second or third Spy Hard question in consecutive weeks. So there's a tip. Watch Spy Hard with Leslie Nielsen.
And watch City Slickers. We've had countless City Slickers questions at this point. So
help us help you.
Exactly.
And watch Home Alone. No, well, just watch all the movies. Just watch all the movies.
And Back to the Future. Yeah. And Back to the Future. And wear Calvin Klein underwear.
Yeah. Yeah. Frank Janisch, what about you, man?
What about me?
Not your underwear. What did you think of the ring?
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say Fruit of the Loom, but anyways. Okay. All right. Deep Cuts, to league standards this season, they had a pretty average second round. But when you go up against IGN, who is playing about 3-4 points above the league average, you have to have an above average second round, especially coming out of that first round. It was just a team like IGN performing that way in the first round. A 4-point lead is a lot in the Schmoedown. Coupled with their second round performance, it's very, very tough. I mean, you're banking on IGN completely just flatlining in the third round if you could get there, and if you could get them there. And they needed a perfect round. There's no way around it. Unfortunately for them, they did what they could. So I commend them for that. And I think there's some definite possibility down the line that they could scare some teams in the tournament if they can get out of the first round. So I'm really looking forward to them in the tournament now.
Well, moving to round 3, IGN is up 8. Deep Cuts goes up first because they are down by 8. Their 2-pointer, Moses in Attack the Block, played by none other than John Boyega, 25-19 IGN still, as Deep Cuts gains 2. And then Deep Cuts for their 3-pointer, straight out of Compton's. Ice Cube was played by Ice Cube Jr., O'Shea Jackson Jr. They missed it, thus IGN wins 25-19. IGN cements themselves as one of the best up-and-coming teams, something that we all recognize in their first match. Unfortunately, that second match cost them what I think would be a potential title shot right now, had that one call gone their way. But let's get to our reactions of the match, starting with Frank.
Yeah, it's a great match from IGN. They scored, or they answered 20 out of 25 for 80% correct. Look, as great as that performance was, the score percentage, I should say, doesn't even crack the top 10 of all time. So it just goes to show you, as good as they are, there's been even better performances, but IGN has been pretty consistent throughout their run here to make them one of the more feared teams, more feared duo in the league thus far. And, well, we'll get to what's going on with them later. But as for Deep Cuts, I thought it was a pretty good showing considering what they had to go up against. If they're up against any other team, they have a fighting shot there in the third round. So, again, like I said earlier, I'm kind of really looking forward to what Deep Cuts could possibly do in the tournament.
Well, hold on a second. You just said there have been better performances by other teams. However, let's just say IGN got all of their round 3 questions. They didn't have to answer any of their round 3 questions. They would have scored 35 points. That would have set a team record, correct?
I'm not talking about points, but percentage.
I know you value the percentage, the accuracy rate, but I mean, had they have done that, I mean, you can't argue that this would have been one of the greatest performances by far. I mean, they were utterly dominant, and this goes back to that conversation that we've had a lot lately, where it's I'm so curious as to what would have happened as far as the record goes, but unfortunately, that's just not the way the game is right now. But once again, IGN had all the promise in the world. Titan, let me get your thoughts on IGN's big win.
Deep Cuts, I don't know what to make of them yet because they TKO'd the Night Sisters, and we know from their 2 matches they're not exactly the best. And did they hang with IGN? Sure, to an extent, but we don't know what could have happened later on. So it's kind of hard to tell. Once they get in the tournament, I think we'll know a little bit more about them. I'm actually impressed with Aaron Wilhelm during these. He got some really good pulls in this match. I think we're underrating here. I know that Attack the Block, not even a U.S. film. I know John Boyega, that was kind of his breakout role. But I still think that was a really good pull, and I think he got some really good ones across the course of the match. So I'm keeping my eye out for him. But the story of this is IGN once again, and it's Jim Vejvoda once again. Incredibly impressive stuff. I wish we could see him as a team. We'll talk about that here in a second. But to see Jim move on and to go possibly up against Atchity or be in the Ultimate Schmoedown tournament is going to be something else.
So there's no question that deep cuts, they're better than real rejects. I mean, that's not a question, correct?
I don't know. I still don't know yet.
I think they probably are slightly better than real rejects. Yeah,
I think they're absolutely better than real rejects. So they're not the worst team in the tournament. Let's give them a little bit of credit.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say they're the worst team, no.
Well, folks, Grifting Christian tried to make us think that he spoiled the outcome to this match by saying that Deep Cuts was in the Ultimate Schmoedown tournament. This was supposed to be an Ultimate Schmoedown qualifying match. So why did he want us to think that Deep Cuts won this match, guys?
You have a weird mind, Brian.
Well, this is what he was setting up. This is not me. This is not me at all. But
no, I didn't read it that way when he accidentally, and I do believe it was an accident, when he accidentally revealed.
Oh, come on. Rewatch it. He was totally.
I did rewatch it. I did. And I don't think he meant to say that.
Did you see our friend Chris Clark in his video where he put Christian's performance in the middle of an Oscar nominee video?
That was pretty good. Yeah.
I mean, come on, the writing's on the wall. But as it turned out, IGN is no more, as Eric Goldman is leaving IGN for a little company, a little startup called Marvel. That would explain Grifting Christian's attempt to mislead us during the team tourney announcement. However, this is something I've talked about a lot on my other podcast, as there's a great deal of turnover when it comes to this online entertainment news space, if you will. A few years ago, there were writers jumping from site to site like there was no tomorrow. It's something you see every summer for some reason, hence Atchity and now Goldman. So rebranding and or disbanding is something that we have to expect when it comes to the Schmoedown, since these players are representing the brands they're employed by in most cases. Now it's happened to both Rotten Tomatoes and IGN in the same month, which is quite a coincidence since both teams are linked by their late 90s San Pedro office space and their recent match for the ages where IGN was screwed by the Clammy Hands debacle. So it's such a shame that we won't get a real rematch, and it's an even greater shame since IGN was really becoming a threat in the team league. It's also worth pointing out, though, that we've already seen a lot of rebranding and disbanding when it comes to the Schmoedown. Elliot and Ricky Schroeder were once Team Machinima. Navarro and Davey Havoc were once Superhero News. We even had a Team SourceFed at one point. So, folks, brace yourself, because internet personalities are like your favorite baristas. There's a great deal of turnover.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense when you're talking about companies such as IGN and Rotten Tomatoes. Now that you think about it, we've had Rotten Tomatoes with Gray and Matt together for 3 years, at least during the Schmoedown. So it's kind of a miracle that they ran that long together, as talented as Gray and Matt are. So going to IGN, it's going to be very, very interesting if Eric is going to still be a team with Jim in the future, just under a different name, a la Rotten Tomatoes now. Modoc. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I have nothing against Eric, and we have a very small sample size. He's been in 3 matches. But if I'm looking at the percentages here, Jim Vejvoda, he's in individual questions, he's answered 23 out of 26. It's pretty disgusting. And then Eric, he's answered 13 out of 25, which puts him at 52%. So, like I said, small sample size for Eric, and he got a good category this past match in comic book to really shine. it appears Jim is more well-rounded, where Eric is more hit and miss, depending on the category. So if Jim does pick up a new partner, it could be very, very interesting because, I mean, who wouldn't want to team up with Jim? So,
well, Jim has made it clear that he's going to pursue singles. And
Right.
in fairness to Goldman, I still think he's better than the pizza guy. I think he's a stronger player than the pizza guy just because he knows more recent information from the looks of it. But at this time, all we know is that Jim Vejvoda, the Flying V, is headed for singles. IGN is disbanded. I don't think they're going to restart under a different name. I'm sure Christian would love to have a Team Marvel in the Schmoedown League. And I wouldn't be surprised, even though Rotten Tomatoes has disbanded, I wouldn't be surprised if he's recruiting more talent from Rotten Tomatoes, because that is such an important brand to have associated with your up-and-coming league. So don't be surprised if we see another version of Rotten Tomatoes in the future. Obviously, we'll always hold Team MODOK as the original Rotten Tomatoes close to our hearts.
It's true what you say about turnover, though, because, I mean, look at the SK Plus channel. There's been turnover in all these shows, too.
Exactly right.
It's a lot of sense, and I can't wait to see Jim in singles.
I mean, look at someone like Roth Cornett. She went from AMC to IGN to HitFix to SJ. I mean, some of these people just are bouncing around all over the place. So it's just something, people, that you need to kind of expect and always have in the back of your minds, because your hearts will be broken as people change employers. And ultimately, the Schmoedown is for everyone to kind of together collectively build their respective brands and represent their respective brands.
That's what it's all about. Well, let's talk about the singles match this week. I'm jumping ahead. I'm jumping fast. Ken Napzok versus JTE, a grudge match, Ultimate Schmoedown qualifier. JTE in this, guys, had some amazing promo work, calling Ken Uncle Ken. He told him that he was going to treat him like this was 8 Mile, and he already knew all of his secrets. JTE came to play, but before we talk about that, have you guys noticed that every time JTE comes to a match, whether it's to support somebody else or he's playing himself, he is hugging that championship belt like it's his good luck teddy bear? Have you guys noticed this?
Yeah, he holds on tight. He's pretty much white knuckling that thing.
Yeah, he's pumping out biceps. I see the vascularity when he's holding on to that belt.
Here's the thing. I don't think they're allowed to take the belts with them off the property.
Oh,
So
I
think when they're on the property, I think they want to get as much belt time as possible because they don't get to take the belts home. And it's actually a good thing that they don't let the belts get taken home, because they'll get damaged. They might get food spilled on them. Someone's cat might scratch them. So it's smart of Christian to keep the belts on the property. But I'm not surprised that he's very attached to his belt. But we got to bring up Shoesy Pants. Shoesy Pants is really the first rivalry that JTI had that the show really exploited back in the Toad Hop days. I don't need a clip to give you a whole history lesson about this rivalry, but I'm not going to give you a whole history lesson about it. You should go back and enjoy it, though, because it's what really led us to this point where JTE is one of the show's greatest heels, one of the show's greatest villains, that Ken playing some of the best psychological warfare we've ever seen by bringing out Shoesy Pants. Such a master stroke by Mr. Napzok.
Ken had an entourage. He didn't just have Shoesy Pants with him. He had Rachel Cushing by his side.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
And that was interesting because Rachel did not do the promo. It was just Shoesy Pants. So I'm not sure when these things were recorded, or perhaps he just wanted to really get in JTE's head by having Shoesy Pants there exclusively during the promo. But she did come out during the entrance, and JTE laughed at Ken's Star Wars belt, which I didn't really appreciate. Yeah, I'm a fan of Top 10, but I don't appreciate everything they do. And that being said, I just didn't like when he laughed at Ken's Star Wars belt, because Ken beat Sam Witwer to get that belt, and that is no laughing matter. That is a big deal. That is a serious opponent that Ken beat to win that belt. So, JTE, come on, man. You're better than that. And right before the match started, guys, there was footage from Phase 5 of Makuga celebrating against Ken. I don't know what the deal is there, but this might be something that becomes Schmoedown lore someday. Hey, remember that match where JTE played Ken and there was that random ghost footage of Ken playing Makuga for some apparent reason. I hope this becomes a thing of myth, a thing of legend.
I have a theory on that.
What's your theory?
Please.
I think Mr. Tom Dagnino got into the editing bay, inserted those clips of Ken losing to get in Ken's head.
I like what you're putting down, Frank. I truly do.
As we heard from Commissioner Harloff, Tom Dagnino was suspended for this match. That's kind of unbelievable. It kind of sucks that we didn't get to see Tom there, but I understand it because he did put Emma in the closet, and you got to be punished for those type of things. You can't just run around all willy-nilly doing whatever you want, so there has to be some established
is breathing down my neck like it's some kind of personal vendetta against Bobby Finstock.
What the hell?
It's Bobby Finstock.
This is my show.
It's Bobby Finstock.
Oh
No.
my God.
It's Bobby Finstock. No.
Hey, what's up, guys? Tom Dagnino here,
Like it's some kind of
a.k.a. the
personal
best.
vendetta.
You know, I was banned for this match, JTE and Napzok. I didn't really fight it. I didn't want to appeal it, you know? JTE didn't need me in the corner for this one. Napzok's a loser. It was very easy, you know? So, a lot of people who think JT's resurgence is, you know, all points to me, is not necessarily the case. Let me break it down for the numbskulls in layman's terms, because I know there's a lot of people who are numbskulls who listen to this. They should try to be a little smarter. Read a book every once in a while. Oz never gave anything to the Tin Man, the Cowardly Lion, or the Scarecrow that they already didn't have. Okay? I'm not sitting back here giving these guys courage, giving these guys hearts, giving these guys brains. I'm there for the single fact I know how to win. We all know how to win. And we're going to keep on winning. Clearly. We're the best faction there is. There's none better. You know, and this other guy, Jay Washington or George Washington, whatever you want to call him, guy's chopping down cherry trees or something. I don't know. Why is he even coming at us? This guy hasn't even won a match. His faction's terrible. They'll be disbanded by December, guaranteed. I told everybody before this. I had somebody in his faction call me at 3 a.m. I turned her down. I was like, listen, we can't have you here. It's not going to work. So, and then, 3:02, I get a call from Robert Meyer Burnett saying he wants to lead the Dopes. It's not my fault everybody wants to join Alliance then. It is what it is. Anyway, the Lions Den's going to keep winning because we have something called infinite intelligence, okay? We use auto-suggestion on everything we do. It's a confidence-building technique, okay? There's faith. If you believe you win and you believe you're going to win, you always will win. It's like being surrounded by crime all your life. At first, you're like, oh, that's wrong. Then the more and more you see it, the more and more you adapt to it and become a full-blown criminal. Not saying I am. I'm just a winner.
Well, I don't know how that happened, but I'm glad that Tom decided to grace us with his presence, so I hope everybody enjoyed that.
JTE was going back and forth with Ken, and Ken is pretty quick-witted, and JTE was keeping up. I was pretty impressed with his back and forth with Ken.
The line about what has this cost your soul, and JTE spits back the cost for an Uber, something to that effect.
Yeah.
I mean, JTE was not fazed whatsoever by Ken's brilliant smack talk. So these guys, their rivalry is incredible, and it all started with JTE's rivalry with Shoesy Pants. This kind of trained JTE for this future rivalry with Ken. I love it.
Well, round one, it was a little bit slow moving. Ken with 5 points, JTE with 4 points. What do we think of round one here, Frank?
Well, I'm not surprised at the score. I thought JTE might do a little better. This is one thing that's really confusing me about JTE. When he has Jeff by his side, he's about 5 or 6 points in that first round. When he's not, he's at this 4-point range, 3-4 points. And it's really confusing to me. And it even, I don't know. And I was not that surprised at Ken's performance in the first round because he's been doing this in the teams as well, earning 5-6 points. So it was kind of what I expected, but I thought JTE might bring it a little bit more.
What do you think, Brian?
It went as I expected. I expected Ken to come out of the gates swinging. I expected him to have a lead going into round 2, and he had a 1-point lead ultimately, but he played rather well in round 1 for the most part. And I'm not sure how Kevin Klien wasn't a controversy in the same way that Damien Kazil was a controversy, but hopefully 2018's Rules Summit will address spelling pronunciation once and for all, because I just can't keep up. But hilarious banter when it came to the Ace Ventura sequel title. That the crowd was laughing up a storm when Ken said "out of Africa" and whatever JTE said. I can't even remember how ridiculous his title was. Call to Nature. It's actually When Nature Calls. But fun moments nonetheless. And I could have sworn we've had the Kate and Leopold question before, Meg Ryan. But look, Ken did what he had to do in round 1. He gave himself the chance to win this match, and that's ultimately all you can ask for from Ken.
Funny bit in round 1 between Christian and Mark when Mark revealed that Christian went to Bayside High School, and Mark was making the joke about Zach Morris and AC Slater. Christian cut him off, and Mark didn't get to complete the joke, which I thought was pretty daggone funny. It just ended up falling flat.
Yeah, my read on that was that Christian could not name any other characters from Saved by the Bell in that moment, because he just heard Ellis say Zach Morris, and so he repeated Zach Morris, and Ellis wanted to keep going down the list, which he ultimately did.
But just because we like to do our research here, and just because we're nerds about the Schmoedown, I actually looked up famous Bayside High School alums from New York, and I've got 2 of note here. Number 1, Matt Stryker, announcer for Lucha Underground, is a Bayside High School alum, along with ESPN Monday Night Football commentator Mike Tirico. Shout out, Bayside High School.
Are you sure this is the same Bayside High School as Christian's?
It's the only Bayside High School in New York, so hopefully it is.
Okay, that would make sense.
All right, well, let's go to round 2, where JTE got spy movies. He went 3 of 4. He got 5 points. Ken, new releases, 2 of 4 for 4 points. It's a slow round for Ken there. JTE, 2 points off of a steal. Trey Parker was the voice in Despicable Me 3. Ken, also a 2-point steal. 2 appearances from Jaws in James Bond. 2 Guy Ritchie questions in the same round.
Double Ritchie.
It was crazy. It's tied 11-11 after 2. Frank, go ahead. What'd you think, man?
Man, this was a really great competitive second round by both of these guys. JTE picking up a 2-point steal right off the first question is an absolute punch to the gut if you're Ken. But then he came right back and was able to capitalize on JTE's him taking a shot at that James Bond question, and Napzok was able to get 2 points to return the favor to even things out there. It was a great second round, and I thoroughly enjoyed how gritty these guys played the second round.
I thought JTE was done for when he missed the Jaws question. It was a terrible guess, since Jaws is known for being one of the most famous Bond villains because he's been in multiple films. I'm surprised he didn't go to multiple choice just to limit the damage. So really a big blunder there. But ultimately, he got a 7-point round. So he did some damage given Ken's 4-point round. As long as he wasn't down by 3 points, JTE was likely the favorite to win based on the tie score.
I'll tell you this. Having Jeff Snyder right there to tell JT kind of like, hey, man, like, calm down, do multiple choice, you don't give away 2 points, that had to have a calming effect on him, as if, let's just envision a scenario where nobody was there. Like, maybe JT takes another shot and loses another 2 points. So it speaks to what we've said many times on this show about having a stable and having people that have your back and that actually show up to support you. It's important. And Jeff was there to support JTE. He had his back. He was trying to give him strategy to help win the match. I thought that was pretty cool.
You're saying this in regards to question 2, because after the Jaws question, which he did not use multiple choice, with the Bourne question, the towel suffocation, Jeff definitely stepped in and said, hey, calm down, use multiple choice. And he guessed it. He got ultimatum. So it's kind of a shame that he didn't just go with his guess before multiple choice, but after the Jaws question and the poor strategy there, he had to go with multiple choice just in case. So ultimately, he got the match where it needed to be going into round 3.
But it speaks to everything that we've said, or at least I've said, that JT's confidence, man, like, Frank, I know you laugh at me when I say this, but it speaks to JT's confidence. Like, he got riled up a little bit, and Jeff calmed him down. He was like, all right, I know how to play this game. I don't need to get excited. I can do this.
Having your stable there is very important.
Oh, God.
That's been proven.
I think a lot of competitors are finding this out. I mean, look at Miss Movies and Jay Washington. I think having Tom Dagnino there has helped in the past. Jeff Snyder helped this time. It's huge. It's a huge support factor.
DC Movie News, Mike
Kalinowski
bringing everybody in. So
exactly, Mike, Roxy and Johnny LaQuasto and Adam Gertler are always there. Yeah, that's great.
If you're outnumbered in the crowd and you don't have a stable, you're at a disadvantage. You're at a big disadvantage. So if the crowd isn't in your favor and you don't have a stable, I think you're naturally favored to lose just based on that alone. So fans, competitors are now understanding the value that a stable can bring.
Actually, something you actually just kind of popped into my head. I believe it was round 1 where a question was being read and JT did not hear it because of the crowd noise. And he said, hey, I didn't hear it because of the crowd. And Ken, in fair gamesmanship, agreed with him. And they repeated the question. I thought that was pretty cool too.
But that's true. Makuga was hooping and hollering the entire match. So that is surprising, isn't it? So it was a great move by Ken, great sportsmanship by Ken to allow that, as I can think of certain competitors who would not let JTE get that repeat without punishment.
First class all the way, Ken Napzok. Let's go to round 3 where Ken got his 2-point question. 1997 was the year. JTE, back to him. He gets his 2-pointer. Seth Rogen and Steve Jobs. Back to Ken. He missed the 3-pointer. Sunset Boulevard. JTE got his 3. It was Selma Hayek, his future wife, in Frida. Ken misses 5-pointer. Guillermo del Toro directed both comic book sequels to Hellboy and, of course, Blade. And it was JTE defeating Ken Napzok, unfortunately, 16-13. JTE is in the Ultimate Schmoedown for the first time since 2014. Brian, what do you think?
Man, Ken's 3-pointer, that was just cruel. Norma Desmond played a washed-up actress in Sunset Boulevard. I knew the answer, but that is just such a tough draw when you're playing a tight match with someone like JTE, someone you have this huge rivalry with. I wish he could have gotten any other category, but something like classics. That's just cruel. When he pulled Liar Liar, the release year 1997, I mean, that just shows you that Ken has more in his head than meets the eye, more than he lets on at least. He's a better player than most people give him credit for. But JTE, man, pulling Frida, that's not the easiest question on the block. Salma Hayek, big pull there. But ultimately, Ken had his chances, but he couldn't put JTE away. And that came back to haunt him with Guillermo del Toro. And I wish he could have made fun of JTE's mispronunciation of Guillermo del Toro's name somehow, as he couldn't answer the question. But that would have been a nice way to get one last shot at JTE in before JTE ultimately wins. But great match nonetheless. I really enjoyed watching this match. Entertaining, great stuff from Ken, especially with these shoesy pants reveal of sorts. And I really appreciated it from a longtime fan perspective. A lot of full circle moments in this match.
It seemed like by the end of it, JT and Ken, shook hands, and it was a healthy respect. And I thought that was pretty cool. I want to point out something in the post match real quick. We'll get there. Jeff Snyder, of course, they didn't have Tom Dagnino, so Grace Hancock was interviewing JT and the rest of the Lions Den. Jeff Snyder used Tom Dagnino's line and said that Ken Napzok, bottom line, you're a loser.
Yeah.
So what do we think about Jeff using the line here? Are we cool with that? Is it an interswitchable line between the Lions Den? Does it matter?
Look, he paid homage to Tom Dagnino. He wasn't trying to use it for his own gain. I mean, he was referencing the man who started. If he did not mention or pay deference to Tom Dagnino before saying it, then I might have an issue, but he made sure to reference him first. So he cited his source. That's important. I love how Android keeps rocking the XX5XX shirt.
It's great.
It's just a wonderful reminder to the league. And I love when Android talks. I love how he pointed out that the top 10 isn't full of phony theatrics. I love how he mocked the Horsemen, how they took their best stallion. I love everything the Android does for the most part.
What about you, Frank? What did you think of this post-match interview here?
Man, and Draco's bringing the heat these past couple of outings, so I've really enjoyed seeing him be more vocal, and he has a lot to say. I mean, I think he's been holding it in for all this time until recently, and now he's got all this ammo that he's just unleashing post-match interviews, which is really fun to see because he's a smart guy. I'm really anticipating what he's going to do after all these matches now, even if he's not playing. I can't wait to hear what he has to say. The Jeff thing about loose behavior, I mean, I think anybody in the Lions Den can say it. I actually don't even think they need a reference that it's Dagnino's thing. I just think, it's more of a Lions Den thing to me personally. That's how I view it. I don't really care who says it for whatever reason. I mean, that's
Jeff is a journalist, so it's only fitting that he would cite his source. I mean,
that's fine because he's used to doing that. So
I love that.
But guys, I want to give credit to Grace because she had a great line where she said, "Another victory under our belt." So it can be read a number of ways. So clever stuff there. I can't believe JTE won, given all of the karma, given the tendency for things to go completely against him in these type of matches. I guess my reverse jinx last week of picking Ken has paid off for top 10.
I'm actually going to tell you who I think is the MVP of this interview segment, Rachel Cushing. She was tearing Grace a new one, and she just ended up walking off. I enjoyed that thoroughly. Another personality pin for the Crusher. I like it.
She congratulated her partner nonetheless. Always happy to see that. And we can't go without saying that Ken wants to defend his Star Wars belt. He's ready to defend it. Grace called him out for his lack of a Star Wars defense. He reminded her, I don't make the cards. I just play in them. So we've got to get a Star Wars defense soon. Ken keeps pushing this kid from Star Wars Explained, so maybe he's the next one on the block. But I want to see head-to-head Whitwer versus Napzok at Collider Studios with actual buzzers this time, where things are a bit more organized. Not to take anything away from that great celebration match that you guys were in attendance for. So who knows? But we got to get a Star Wars match soon. I think we're all itching for it at this point. And again, great match.
We interrupt this amazing episode of the Schmoedown Rundown to bring you this news. Do you like what you've heard so far? Do you like the Schmoedown Rundown? And of course, why wouldn't you? Do us a favor. If you are listening on iTunes, please rate and review the show along with all the other shows on the Schmoes Know feed. If you are watching via YouTube on the SK Plus channel, be sure to like and leave a comment. We would really appreciate that, and it will help out all the other shows on the channel, such as Outlaw Nation with John Roca, the Harloff Podcast with Christian Harloff, The Wenger Show, among the rest of the shows on the channel. Something new for everybody every single day, so definitely check out the SK Plus feed and the Schmoes Know iTunes feed. And now back to the best looking host on the channel, Aaron Turner.
All right, guys, we're back from break, and we're talking about an InnerGeekDom singles match this week. No team match. It's not happening. This will be Rachel Cushing versus the Killer, Mike Kalinowski. I feel like we've been here before. InnerGeekDom special matchup. Frank, who you got? Who you leaning towards?
This is going to be really interesting, but I'm going to take Rachel Cushing. I just think, look, she's answering at an 81% clip to Kalinowski's 67% clip. So, I mean, that's a pretty big gap, especially in InnerGeekDom where competition is usually pretty tight during matches.
How many questions have they each have?
So, Kalinowski has answered 22 out of 33, Cushing 17 out of 21. It's kind of close, but you could yeah, I think Rachel really wants it. And I know Kalinowski wants it just as bad. But I think Rachel losing the Nerds Watch match in the collision, and then Ken losing, I think she really wants to pull this one home and hopefully be on some sort of high note going into these tournaments.
Brian, what do you think, man?
Cushing and Kalinowski are the hottest names to come out of InnerGeekDom since Navarro and Burnett. The Joker broke Cushing's heart, while the Gendreau broke General Kalinowski's front line. I think we're in store for an InnerGeekDom battle for the ages, with the Crusher coming out on top, since she's sweatier when it comes to Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and all of those really sweaty categories. Kalinowski's good, but she's got the edge where it counts there, and she's really gonna get back on the right track after, again, it's my fault that she lost that match at Collision alongside Ken. She's not going to make the mistake of taking my advice and drinking a little alcohol, so the Crusher will get back on track against Kalinowski. She will win an epic InnerGeekDom battle.
Guys, I'm going to say something that I didn't think I was going to say in terms of Mike Kalinowski.
Don't you shove him down my throat.
I'm starting to resent him as a competitor because I feel like he is being shoved down my throat. They're trying to make it happen. And I think this movie's at a point. They're trying to shove him down my throat. And as a WWE fan that has no logic in the internet world, I resent you trying to shove him down my throat. He is the John Cena of the Movie Trivia Schmoedown at the moment. As my friend John would say, he's basically Rosy Cheeks McApplebombs. He can do nothing wrong. He's too good of a guy. And I will not stand for it. I'm taking the Crusher.
I'd rather have someone new be shoved down our throats versus the same person over and over again. So at least there's one silver lining to that whole throat shoving notion.
Wow. All right. Also happening next week, it's an Ultimate Schmoedown qualifying singles match. It is the Beast, William Bibbiani, great friend of the show, versus another friend of the show, the movie man, Scott Mantz. Brian, who you got here?
William Bibbiani's quest for a title shot begins here. This is why he dumped the dead weight of 3.5 horsemen. The beautiful thing about Mantz is that he's a good player who makes every match he's in both entertaining and competitive. However, the Beast is barreling into this tournament, and he's coming to eat. The Mantz Man is just an hors d'oeuvre in the grand scheme of the Beast's title run.
Frank, what do you think here? Where are you leaning?
If JTE can beat Bibbiani, well, no,
Go
seriously,
on.
Bibbiani's gonna win. Bibbiani's gonna win. I mean, no, it just there's no way. I mean, there is a way, but not in the Schmoedown. It's just not gonna happen. Bibbiani, I think, is actually gonna TKO Mantz.
Wow. Is this not a movie nerd's dream match right here?
Oh, sure.
You've got one of the most esteemed critics in Hollywood, Crave Online and other outlets, and you have Scott Mantz, the mayor of Hollywood screenings.
He's got access to Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
We walked right into that one, Aaron.
Well, I sure did. But I'm actually also going to take the Beast here. I like Mantz, but it's just not going to be enough. I feel like the Beast is on a warpath, as he liked to call it, and this is just another stepping stone for Bibbs to get closer to that championship, and hopefully somewhere down the line he either gets a piece of Roca or McWeenie. I'm into it either way.
Here's one thing I'm kind of looking forward to this Bibbiani Mantz match is, if I remember correctly, Bibbiani alluded to something in his time with us that someone pointed towards something. Maybe you take a little stab at La La Land. I don't know what Bibbiani might have up his sleeve to rile. Oh, that was you. Okay.
That was me. That was me, actually.
No,
Whoever it was, I'm wondering if we'll see some sort of jab at La La Land via Bibbiani. That'd be kind of fun.
You know it. He's probably gonna chew up a Blu-ray or something. But
Oh God!
look, besides this match, I think the only other match that is super sweaty as far as film criticism goes is that inevitable Bibbiani McQueenie match. We're all dying to see that. It's been a dream matchup of mine, of Aaron's, of Frank's. So hopefully this sets that up maybe soon, maybe within this tournament. Who knows?
I hope they're on the same side of the bracket, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Because both of them getting to the finals, look, as good as they are, it's going to be kind of a stretch. But if they can meet in that second round, maybe the third round of the tournament, that'd be pretty exciting stuff.
I'm actually looking forward. I just had like a flash bulb in my head of free-for-all, and all 5 people at the table are Bibbs, Whitney, McWeeny, Vavida, and Merle.
Oof.
Man,
imagine that table.
Oh my goodness.
Dirty.
Yeah, save that for next year. Keep that in the brain till about, I don't know, May or something. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the Schmoedown Rundown. We hope you enjoyed it. We enjoyed bringing it to you. Frank Janisch, where can you be found online, man?
You can find me at FrankieJ29 on Twitter and Instagram. I also just did a movie review of Annabelle Creation, so if you want to go check that out, link is on my Twitter profile. And look out for the Schmoedown.com article that has the recap of the Schmoedown. I said it all weird, but you get it. So that's that.
You know, I don't usually like to do this because, you know, Frank has a giant ego and I don't like to pat it or anything, but his Annabelle Creation video review is actually quite well produced. I was impressed.
You know, I Googled how to do all of that.
Okay. Well, he doesn't really have a big ego. I was kidding. Also here, hey, Bryan, where can you be found online, man? What do you got going on?
You guys can find more of me on Twitter at BDF331, as well as my TV film podcast at filmschlubspodcast.com or wherever podcasts are found. Special thanks once again to Bryan Ward. Follow him at Bryan E. Ward, bryaneward.com.
And of course, I'm Aaron. I'm your host. You can find me on Twitter at ATTitanium. And for those of you that stuck around till this part last week and got that little extra nugget and enjoyed it, we appreciate that. You may want to stick around from now on as we pull some Marvel Studios style post credits for you. But until next week, we'll see you.
Let me just say, my week really consisted of more Dunkirk. I've now seen Dunkirk 4 times, 3 times in IMAX. And the last time I saw it was kind of a special experience because a veteran, an Air Force veteran, just so happened to be sitting next to me. You could tell he had flown planes, probably in Vietnam, I would say. And it was interesting watching him because he was sitting in a way to where I could kind of see his reactions. And it was amazing to see how moved he was by this film. And it's amazing when you think about how for some people, these are more than movies. These are kind of their experiences on screen. And you can't relate to certain films like you can with a film like Dunkirk, especially if you're a veteran. So I love seeing how moved he was. And I actually got to talk to him a bit after the movie. And this was on the day that the president made some ruling in regard to the military, which I don't want to get into, but it was a controversial ruling. And he was talking about Dunkirk, and he was basically saying to me, imagine if you were told that you couldn't be a hero. And it was kind of the theme of the day. Imagine being told that you weren't allowed to be a hero. Imagine that in the times of Dunkirk where these soldiers just wanted to be saved. And imagine being told that you weren't allowed to save them, that you weren't allowed to be a hero. Imagine being told that. So, I don't know, he said a lot of moving things that, again, every time I see this film, I notice new things. But it's just a new experience every time, and I'll forever remember this time because of this guy.
That's a pretty cool experience.
I always find it interesting when you get vets going to these kinds of movies because some aren't comfortable reliving that kind of experience on the screen. Some like to pay respects to, you know, what the filmmaker's trying to do. And so I always find it very interesting who decides to go and what they get out of it, because I've talked to a couple of veterans who just don't want to relive this stuff because they've been through some pretty dark stuff, and that's completely understandable. So I always find it interesting.
Yeah, I remember when Saving Private Ryan came out, they interviewed a bunch of World War II vets, and they talked about how it was so close to real life and how they would never watch it again, though. They never wanted to relive the film because it was so true to life. So, like I said, for us, they're films, they take us to a different place, but for some people, it's real life. and it was just amazing to be able to watch someone who's been in those situations react. So, Aaron, you've only seen Dunkirk once still at this point?
Yeah, just once. I'm just waiting to buy the Blu-ray at this point.
I wish we could get, I don't know, like Blu-ray is going to be great, don't get me wrong, but I wish we had certain films just on rotation at IMAX theaters across the country. So we can relive those experiences more than once every 20 years.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Did you guys have any family members fight in any wars or serve in any wars? My grandfather volunteered to go over after Pearl Harbor happened. He volunteered to go and be a doctor, I believe in the Air Force. And because of what he did, my dad volunteered to be a doctor in Vietnam. Neither of them were drafted, but they just wanted to serve their country. And even as doctors, it was important to them.
And my grandfather was a sorry, Frank. My grandfather was a World War II veteran, but no one else. I mean, my uncle Jerry was in the Army, but he was never drafted in a war or anything like that.
Yeah, my dad's uncle, I guess my great uncle, he was in World War II. He was in the Pacific Theater, and which is if you know anything about World War II, was pretty brutal.
Yeah,
compared to the European side of the war. So yeah, it was. I remember just hearing, like, he actually brought back a lot of stuff. He collected a lot of stuff too. He's a really interesting guy, and yeah, he had like helmets and stuff. Like he actually had, I don't know how this happened, but he had one of those like a Japanese helmet. So it was, yeah, he had some pretty. He brought back some interesting stuff.
Shifting gears to something that relates to Dunkirk a bit, but I keep hearing people criticizing things like character development when it comes to Dunkirk, and I feel like, you know, everyone's entitled to their opinion. Film is subjective, blah, blah, blah. But for Dunkirk, it's not like Christopher Nolan forgot about character development. It's that Dunkirk was going for something very different from most films. It was going for a visceral experience where the characters are almost proxies for us. They are meant to bring us into the story to where we put ourselves in their shoes. We're not supposed to learn about characters' life stories as they're running for their lives along the beach or ducking for cover from bombs. And I feel like some of the internet has this checklist in mind that every great film has to have great character development and a perfect score and you know, balanced out acts 1, 2, and 3. They're all you know, fleshed out perfectly. And every great film that's out there are square pegs. They don't all fit in this perfect round hole. Every great film has its own unique traits for different reasons. And sometimes it's not about character development. Sometimes it's just about being in the moment with or without dialogue. Sometimes you don't need to have what you think you need to have to be a great film. So I'm kind of taken aback by some of the criticism for a film like Dunkirk when it was going for something very different.
Yeah, the thing that I took away from this whole characterization debate is that if it was intentional, that's what Nolan wasn't trying to do.
Yeah.
If it was something intentional, like if he was going for some character development and it fell flat, then I can totally see the criticism. But and so I really didn't understand most reviews that were, you know, harping on this characterization thing. And the other thing is, if you need that in a movie, that's okay, that's fine. But I was just kind of hoping I'd see people say, I understand this wasn't what he was going for, and he did it very well. But for someone as a viewer, I need more characterization, and that's fine. I can understand it. But when you're so just like, this movie didn't have any characterization, what the hell? Like, that was just like, to me, odd, and not giving the film its justice in that regard.
I mean, imagine the silent film era. I mean, what would they say in that era? Oh, there wasn't enough dialogue to my liking. Like, that's kind of the point. And I learned so much about those characters in Dunkirk just by their actions in times of trauma, in times of survival. I learned so much about who they were as men while they were fighting to save others and themselves. Anything to add, Aaron?
I think it's interesting in the case of Dunkirk how you can change someone's perspective just by giving a different point. Like I won't say who it was because I mean it's not that it's embarrassing, but I was talking to somebody that we all know about Dunkirk, and they were making an argument about character development, and like there just wasn't enough character for me. And I was like, well, think of it this way: Dunkirk is the character, and everything else around it is just the story. And they were like, oh, well, now I see it differently, and it just takes a little bit of maybe a sway of perspective to get it. It just Dunkirk is such a, and it's not a war film. It's not. It's almost a quiet drama. It's a very quiet film to be a quote unquote war film, as people are calling it. It's very quiet, and it's an incredible thing where Nolan does these things like Interstellar, where it's like giant and look at these giant, huge ideas. And then Dunkirk, he does big ideas, but he does it with the structure of film and not the structure of the narrative. I think it's master filmmaking.
He wanted you to know about Dunkirk at the end of the day, because a lot of us in America did not know the whole story. It was an act of communal heroism. And I think if he focused more on one of the characters, it takes away from this communal effort where an entire country ultimately banded together to save the lives of nearly 400,000 soldiers. And still, I got all the information that I needed from Mark Rylance, just the way he behaved, just from the reactions that Tom Hardy would emote through his eyes. That's all I needed to know about who that guy was, just through his actions. So I think people, again, sometimes get caught up in this checklist or this criteria that they think good films or great films need to have. But the beauty of filmmaking is that every great film can be completely different with completely different traits, and yet it's still great. The beauty of The Revenant, natural light, not a lot of dialogue. It was very different from most films that are nominated for Best Picture. And that's why it's so great, because it is so different from the pack. And Dunkirk is also very different from the pack. So don't think that every film has to meet this checklist of items to be considered great. I don't like that thinking.
I mean, you can certainly think that way, but I think by thinking that way, you do yourself a disservice of enjoying certain films like that. Yeah.
There wasn't enough backstory. It doesn't have to be all backstory to be effective. Sometimes it's just about the moment that you're in. And that's why it's my favorite film of the year. It's such a unique experience. And I try to put together my top 10 list at this point in the year. And between
your what? Your what?
My top 10 list.
He said top 10.
My top 10 list. And it was tough because Logan and Dunkirk are really the only films that I can see myself coming back to multiple times. I've seen a lot of really good films this year, like War for the Planet of the Apes, Get Out, Split I'll remember forever for a very different reason, but there are only two films so far that I will rewatch once a year, and that's Logan and Dunkirk so far.